And welcome everyone to our weekly call, the sort of post OARC call this week. I just share my slides, not by pressing the right button, hopefully. Yep. Some of us were in Charlotte, either in person or virtually, last week to attend the OARC 42 meeting on last Thursday, Friday. In terms of the agenda for the call today, I thought it might be useful just to share a view of some of the highlights, and if anyone else on the call was also in attendance for any of the meeting, feel free to sort of share your points of view as well. And then, as always, we go to some of the news headlines from the last week, of which there was a surprisingly large number this week. Talk about some forthcoming events, etc., and time permitting, pick up on any other business at the end. So without further ado, let's just jump in to the OARC meeting, which, if you were not aware, was very much themed. They focused on the 42, and since that's the answer to life, the universe, and everything, in this case, life, the universe, and DNS, went with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as the theme for the meeting. And I'm pleased to say that the meeting merchandise did include a towel in the form of a branded screen wipe, which was a nice touch. I thought, for anyone that's familiar with the Hitchhiker's story. That aside, we in fact, the pre-meeting, so on the Wednesday, the day before the call started, or the meeting started, there was a session focused on DELEG, something which you may recall Ralph Weber from Akamai presented on this call a few weeks back, which is an extension to DNS. And there was something which was titled as a hackathon on the Wednesday, which, although it was called a hackathon, it was really a discussion, sort of literally around a table. Not really a hackathon in the normal sense of the word, but it was a sort of good discussion. I stayed for the first half day. I had to drop out to do some other things in the afternoon. So my reflections from the first half day, or sort of points arising from it. First one, which I thought was really rather useful, was to add a FAQ section to the existing GitHub draft, which is already up sort of post-meeting. So some notes were made during the discussion, which have been sort of transformed into the FAQ since. Other than that, things that I picked up from the discussion, this is a bit random, this is just things that caught my attention, was that DELEG could help prevent DNS-based content filtering and blocking, which we didn't have time to explore during the discussion in the morning, but that was certainly something which caught my attention for further discussion in due course. There's probably the most interest in the discussion was around the alias mode, so-called alias mode, that DELEG facilitates, which isn't something which is currently available in DNS, which, as you can see from the screen, if you're looking at it, allows multi-provider DNSSEC setups with per operator algorithms. So you may have 2 or 3 operators, each running a separate DNSSEC algorithm. So depending on the algorithm you're using or want to use, you could be directed to a different provider for a particular domain. And I think some thought that was a particularly exciting feature to be added, especially those in the CDN community. Strictly speaking, not part of the sort of DELEG session, but this in the presentation that Dave Lawrence gave in the meeting proper, Paul Mocker-Petris, the author of the original DNS spec spoke at the mic and seemed to be broadly supportive of the concept of extending or improving or enhancing the DNS protocol. The recording should be up in the next couple of weeks, so you can watch that, including Paul's sort of comment from the mic, and see if you think that's a fair synopsis. But that was my take on it. He seemed in favour of the idea of improving the DNS in concept, which is interesting because I know previously Paul Vixie has, I think in his sort of comments that I've seen or heard, been relatively negative about the idea, very much sort of suggesting that the constant sort of tweaks to an extension of DNS, we're at the point where potentially adding one more thing could indeed be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, hence the imagery which I pulled from the OARC Mattermost channel, where someone had sort of found a rather interesting sort of diagram, possibly from generative AI, I'm not entirely sure. And then finally, again, not part of the discussion on the Wednesday, but Jeff Huston had the opportunity to read the DELEG proposal for the first time during his lengthy flight over to Charlotte from Sydney. And I think on balance doesn't appear to be a fan of the idea, but it is sort of traditional fashion. He's posted an extensive article on it on the AP Nick blog, which gives you an idea just how long the flight was. So quite thought-provoking, given it's Jeff has authored it, as you would expect. So that's worth a look if you have an interest in DELEG and its background and implications, etc. So that was the Wednesday anyway. We're sort of mainly DELEG themed. What I thought I'd do is just I'll pull out two or three, or maybe a half dozen of the sessions. I'm not going to go through all of them because it take far too long. Give my sort of 30-second sort of take on each of them. But as I say, anyone else that attended the meeting, if there's anyone on the call that did, feel free to jump in with your observations, either as I make mine or at the end if you prefer. So either way is fine. But from the first morning, I thought I'd pull out Shane Kerr's presentation on using multiple authoritative vendors does not work like you thought. And a one-slide summary. This is one of Shane's slides, where in the event of an outage, he sort of has put up some data from 4 of the major public resolvers, mainly to illustrate the point that 2 of them, Google and Quad9, behave differently to the way that you may expect, whereas Cloudflare and OpenDNS, broadly speaking, continue in an uninterrupted fashion. So I think this will hopefully prompt further exploration, further discussion with Google and Quad9 to understand why the difference of behaviour. But that was, I think, one of the main observations from the work that Shane did that led to him putting this particular presentation together. As I'm going to keep these fairly short in the interest of not taking too much time. I'll then pull out 2 others from the afternoon on Thursday. DELEG, unsurprisingly, Tao or Dave Lawrence's presentation, and also the one that followed on Resolver capability testing from Mark or Robert Shaw. So taking those in order, again, this is one of Tao's slides, and he's just sort of asking some questions. This is, I think, not quite his end slide, but towards the end of his presentation, just really looking for people to share their views on whether doing this is the right thing to do. And I mentioned the DNS camel previously, Tao did as well. He has, or some testing, Tao didn't do it, but one of the others did, already done some testing to see whether sort of legacy systems work well, and there's more testing to be done. As you can see on Bind, Not, PowerDNS, and Unbound, they've already sort of checked with some of the existing open resolvers, as you can see on the screen, but there's plenty more to be done, and they've yet to start, I think, on DNS forwarders. And I think there are some questions there. There are also some questions currently being debated, such as should DO 53 support be required? What about sideways delegation, etc., etc. So this is very much a work in progress. There will be a BOF at the IETF meeting in Brisbane next month, roughly a month's time, or 5 weeks from now. And I think part of the understanding of the BOF is the decision as an outcome of the BOF may be to take on Deleg as a topic, but not necessarily in the way that's been envisaged by the people being involved thus far. So, it's still being molded as a concept and could change quite considerably from its sort of current definition. So, in other words, if this is of interest, now's a good time to get involved, especially if you're not keen on the current direction of travel. You can absolutely influence it if you engage sooner rather than later. And then Mark Robert Shaw from the DNS Research Federation gave a presentation on a testing framework that he's currently pulling together, partly, I think, at least partly with funding from ICANN, amongst others. The intent is it will allow people to run their own private testing, but also where appropriate for the testing results to be pooled together to create a knowledge base, in many ways to the APNIC data, but solving a slightly different problem. But as I say, that's very much in development at the moment. And in fact, Mark had hoped to demo an early version of the sort of testing software during OARC, but because of the setup at OARC, that wasn't practical. So he's going to do it on this call in I think 2 weeks time, so not next week, but the week after. So you'll be able to see the first, I think it'll be the first live demo of the capability on this call in a couple of weeks, if it's of interest. Running through to the Friday, there were some 3 sort of presentations back to back from Chinese contributors. In fact, 2 were done in the room by a student who's currently based in the US on behalf of a larger team, and then in the middle one was given by a remote presenter. I've highlighted 2 of the 3 in particular, which were looking at vulnerabilities in different ways, and there was a sort of systematic approach to finding vulnerabilities, and the punchline in both was towards the end of the presentation. So I'm going to skip over all of the detail of the presentations. So if this again of interest, do look forward through them at your leisure. But the punchline was incredibly impressive, and it was sort of relatively low key at the end. In the first presentation, they confirmed at the end that they'd found 33 vulnerabilities, and as you can see on the slide, have been awarded a bounty for those from Microsoft. And then the second presentation, where I've captured a couple of slides that sort of crunched together on this screen slightly, that they found 23 vulnerabilities across 6 of the sort of major pieces of software, which you can see listed towards the bottom of the screen, many of which have already been fixed. I think there are a couple still outstanding, but I thought that was incredibly impressive, the sheer number of vulnerabilities that they'd found through these 2 distinct projects. and now postdoctoral student who was in the room giving the two presentations, did mention he was looking for a summer internship at the uh, when he finished the two presentations, and there seemed to be a reasonable amount of interest from people in the room, unsurprisingly, given the results that he was able to present. I think this second slide, this was principally his project. The other one he was presenting on behalf of others, but this was he was, I think, the lead on this second presentation. So a very systematic approach. They found a lot of vulnerabilities, it would appear. And then final one from me, was I've mentioned Jeff Huston earlier. He gave a presentation immediately after lunch, and Jeff's a fantastic person to have to give presentations after lunch, because they're generally very fast moving with plenty of data, but also plenty of humour, which is just the thing for the post-lunch sort of lull, to just re-energise the room, which he certainly did. I think it's safe to say, is the DNS ready for IP6? I'd summarise his presentation. My take on it is no. And again, I just pulled out one slide which caught my eye. There were variations on a theme, and it's definitely worth watching the recording of this if you have 20 minutes or so. As I say, it's pretty fast moving, plenty of material. But yeah, as you can see, if you placed authoritative servers on an IPv6 only service, how many users will be able to reach you currently? And it's about 2/3. So immediately a third of the world's internet users would be unable to access the DNS, which would seem like a bad thing. So there's a lot of work to be done before the world is indeed ready for an IPv6 sort of only DNS, at least. I think that was it. Yes, it was from me, from a very quick run through of things that caught my eye from the 2 days. I don't know if anyone's on the call that was that joined any of the sessions. Brett, yes, I think you were on remotely. So any comments on either on any of that or anything else that you think deserves comment?
Yeah, well, I think there was one specific thing that I did think deserved comment, which I don't think you covered, but I may have been dropping off slightly. My apologies. It's been a long day. So I was particularly, I think the highlight of I think there was lots and lots of good stuff in OARC as usual. Some stuff that was way over my head, and some stuff that wasn't. That's also usual. But the thing that I think stood out for me more than anything else was, I think it was Wes Hardaker's presentation on TAFI, which was the traffic analysis tool. If you've worked in any kind of large-scale DNS operations and worked with DDoS attacks and stuff like that, you probably either developed something or used something commercial to do this kind of stuff. But the beginnings of that tool that he developed looks absolutely fantastic. And certainly it's not such a, because of the area that I work in now, it's not such a big deal for me, this DDoS attacks. But certainly when I was at Nominate, this would have been, that tool would have been right on my list of things we need to look at now. So if anybody who's running DNS operations at some kind of scale, I think would find that extremely interesting.
Yeah, fair point. I think that's very much an alpha test sort of stage at the moment. So he's looking for input on it, as I recall from the presentation. So yeah, good call. I think on that one. To be fair, yeah. So thanks for that, Brett. Again, anyone else pick up anything additional, or indeed any comments on any of the ones that I've already mentioned that you want to make? Not sure how many people were there, just getting down the list of names, but if you've got any comments.
I might have a couple comments.
Yeah, sure, please, Eric.
One is everyone gave a big thank you to Keith Mitchell for his 17 years of service at OARC. He has retired. Our new executive director, Phil, is standing up. His first conference went really well. So, you know, there's great hope for the future. Um, the the cache poisoning vulnerability was discussed there, and how it's handled, how the initialization of your bailiwick, that was of that is of importance. It would not be surprised if someone tries to take advantage of this. But at least it's out in the open, and people, if they want to make fixes to their software, have the ability to do so. That was reviewed during the session. I don't know if you covered that already.
Yeah, I think the cache was that the first presentation on the Friday morning.
Yeah,
Two cows, no, not two cows. I made that up. It was two something, two Tudors
yeah. Uh,
presentation. So that was one of the two that yielded results in terms of identifying vulnerabilities. I think that's what you're referring to.
And that looked like it was someone just went through the code of each software to figure out what the steps were, and that kind of
Yeah,
analysis is definitely needed, to be confirmed by each and every vendor.
yeah,
And they're only the open source vendors. The commercial vendors could also have um, their own issues.
yes, yeah, definitely, yeah, yeah. The two-door attack, I think, and I mean those presentations, yeah, they look like an enormous volume of work had gone on in the background to sort of pour through a lot of stuff to sort of tease out those vulnerabilities, which is pretty impressive. Yeah, thanks, Eric, for that. Anyone else with anything else you want to highlight before we move on?
All the stuff is online, or it should be at some point. So hopefully this will be a guide, what you're saying
Yeah,
today, as to
yeah,
what
all the
people to
presentations
look
are
at.
definitely already up. The actual slide where the recordings, I think they're hoping to get up within the next 2 weeks. I think a lot of the teams at the Nanog event this sort of Monday through Wednesday, so we should start to see things appear within a week or so of Nanog finishing. Okay, thanks, Eric. Right, if there are no other comments, let me reshare my screen and we'll move on to some of the news headlines when my machine wakes up, which it is. Okay, so hopefully that's whetted your appetite if you weren't able to make the meeting, and do take a look at the slide material as it appears, and then the recordings when they're available as well. Right, moving on to the news headlines, of which those of you that are on the mailing list would have had these in your inbox this morning already. There, as I say, there are quite a lot this week, so plenty to catch up on. I'm not going to go through all of them because it'd take far too long, but I just called out those that I thought were of interest. So top of the screen, just the fact that whether this is start of a new trend, let's wait and see. But just highlighting that there's been a small decline in the total number of .com and .net registrations, so it might just be a blip this quarter. But it'd be interesting to see if that continues next quarter, or if the sort of previous growth trajectory is regained. But yeah, just thought it was interesting to maybe it's a leading indicator of sort of economic conditions. Who knows? Also, there was a piece on a further piece on the Ethereum naming service, this time linked to GoDaddy and capability that they made available. So just following on with sort of discussions on blockchain linked naming schemes. ENS keeps coming up in that regard, so it's interesting to see another instance of that, this time with GoDaddy. Just skipping down the screen, the fourth one I mentioned already, Jeff Houston's blog post on DELEG. So again, that's just confirmation of it there. I don't think I need to mention any of the rest of these. Some of these will be of interest to you, so you can peruse them at your leisure. Yeah, more on the cybersecurity side. That it was interesting to see that ExpressVPN, one of the more popular VPN services, been found to be leaking some DNS requests, and that's recently come to light. So even though I don't think it retains any logs, it does nevertheless, in certain conditions, leak some DNS data when it's in operation. There was an interesting post on the RSA conference blog from Kathleen Moriarty, just looking on the current tussle between security and sort of privacy, which may well be worth a look. And yeah, that's probably it. I think in terms of the headlines, worthy of specific mention. But as I say, those of you on the mailing list, you'll have all of these. You can sort of click on them as appropriate to read the details. And I'll also include these all of these links with the link to the recording of the call as well. So either way, you'll get them. There are a couple of ITF specific things I wanted to mention. One is with regards to DELEG, there's a new mailing list has been set up by the ITF specifically focused on DELEG, the link which is on the screen. There's also a DELEG channel on Mattermost for the DNS OARC community as well. So anyone that's interested in DELEG, it's worth looking both at the ITF mailing list as that becomes active, but definitely also the Mattermost channel, and I'll put a link to the Mattermost channel in the when I put up the link to the recording, so you got that as well. I think we mentioned that a week or so ago. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that caught my eye, various things. Not sure if there's anything specifically worth highlighting on there. Probably the one at the very bottom, those of us that have an interest in Eurodig, the draft program is available, and they're inviting comments. So if you're thinking about attending Eurodig, click on the link to get to the draft program and make any comments as you see fit. But as I say, there's plenty of other stuff going on so at the moment, of which those are the things that caught my eye. In terms of calls for papers and workshop proposals, etc., if you're planning to submit presentations for the Southeast Europe sort of linked so IGF, then C12 has got a deadline of today. So you'll need to get that submitted pretty quickly if you're planning to present there. And also those of us that are still eligible for Youth Dig, then you need to put if you're planning to apply to sort of take part under the Youth Dig banner, then you've got till this Wednesday to put your application. You have to be under 30 though, so there'll be a select group of us, I think, that are eligible for that. And then other things there, I just mentioned the third one down because it's only just become available. There's a questionnaire about the as part of the 20-year review of the whole WSIS implementation. There's a questionnaire on that, so anyone that's got interest on the policy side, that's worth a look as well. And there's various other deadlines coming up, but not quite so imminently. So you've got a few more weeks for most of the rest of those on this screen. Okay, and then in terms of forthcoming events, I mentioned earlier, it's NANOG 90 today through Wednesday in Charlotte. So some of you may well be there, although I think that's just about started. I think it started at sort of 4 o'clock UK time. And then various other things coming up. The two highlights on the screen. One is just the OARC community has got, during Apricot in Bangkok, they've got a stream running on Friday the 26th. I think it's a Friday. Anyway, on the 26th of February, there's a whole day of for an OARC community meeting in Thailand. And then also on this Friday, we should see the preliminary agenda for ITF 119 published for comment. I think it's another week before the agenda is finalised, but that's coming up this Friday or thereabouts. It might slip by a day or two, but it's normally that time. I see a question in the chat from Kurt. No location for RIPE 88. I must have forgotten to have that on there. It slipped off in the editing. As you rightly said, it's in Poland for anyone that's interested. Oversight on my part. Don't know why. No specific reason. Nothing against Poland. Okay. So I think that's everything from. Oh no. So call next week. Will be sorry, it is next week, not the week after. Be that Resolver capability testing open source framework demonstration, bit of a mouthful, that I mentioned from the session on Thursday at OARC. So anyone that's got an interest in that, join the call next week and you can see the demonstration. And then we've got stuff sort of lined up through for the next couple of months, as you can see. Anyone's got anything you particularly want to talk about on the call, as I've said before, just get in touch, let me know, and I'll be happy to add you to the agenda if it's something that you want to present, or equally see if we can find others that have the capability if it's something you're just interested in but not able to present on yourself. And that really is it this time. So that's it from me. So let me stop talking, because I'm sure you're fed up with the sound of my voice, and see what else anyone else wishes to mention. So if there is anything you want to mention, please either drop it in the chat and I'll read it out, or just unmute and talk, which would be much nicer, so you don't have to hear my voice talking on your behalf. So that I'll just have a quick look at the chat. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I agree. I can see your comment in the chat about adding IPv6 records can inadvertently trigger retry with TCP behavior by authoritative servers, leading to quite significant volume issues.
Andrew, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Regarding DELEG, if two of the very prominent people developing or that have developed DNS in the past have so controversial opinions on it, I'm actually curious what our team has as a majority opinion, if this will be the right direction or this is aiming towards the right thing. Actually having more of a, let's say, feeling what the problem would be more substantial rather than a religious discussion, if it's necessary or if it's solving an essential problem or something. I mean, I'm curious, when Paul Marco-Petri said he's not, or he's in favor, and Paul Vixie said he's doubting it, I would like to see more arguments, pro and con, actually, to see if this is something which should be having a focus, because there are many things involved along or around with that topic. And I'm curious what our group is doing, or what our group thinks this is helping or aiming at the right direction. This is, for me, a little puzzle.
Okay, well, should we ask the question then? In that case, does anyone have an opinion at this stage on DELEG that you're?
Michael has a suggestion. I think it's good. I mean, actually giving both sides the opportunity to say where the risks are or where you see the problems, and or look at the let's say, IETF developments, what they're aiming for, and to see maybe it can be fixed very simple, or maybe it is okay, or what the arguments are. I would really like to see technical arguments, pro and con. This is what I'm missing here a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'd be certainly very happy to ask both Pauls. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Have Paul Vixie and Paul Mockapitris on the same call. That'd be quite. I mean, we have had that before a while back, to be fair. So it's not something we've never done before. But yeah, I'm certainly happy to reach out to them, and maybe Jeff, who would then have a different take on it. Maybe those three will be an interesting combination.
Yeah, he has strong opinions too all the time. But as I said, I'm a little bit puzzled because I personally like it too. But I would see what the problems are for somebody with that name, Mockapitris, saying this is not okay, or with Vixie saying this is not okay. I mean, what's the point?
Yes, it doesn't do any harm to have someone tell you why they have a different point of view, does it? In case there's something that has been overlooked. Yeah. Okay. I will happily sort of take that.
I have an opinion, and since I was there at the time, is that there are awesome hallway discussions that can be had, but this is the kind of thing that is important enough to get right and not get wrong, that getting people who have opinions into the same room, or at least onto the same call, will make a big difference for understanding, because the problems that Deleg might try to solve might not be problems for everyone, or people may not see from the perspective of whether I'm a very larger cursor operator or I'm an authority. This would affect everyone, and how, if you're changing how NS records are interpreted, that's a big thing. And there's if you put enough slack in that rope of how Deleg is implemented, we can hang ourselves in complexity.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, things like that. Yeah.
join the conversation. IETF, DNS OARC, any place you see these people you think are important, talk with them about it.
Andre, it sounds like something maybe for a slightly extended call, and maybe have I've forgotten the guy's name who invented Deleg, but the guy who was presenting at OARC, to come on here and do a kind of introduction to it, and then have some kind of panel discussion where Paul, Jeff, other Paul, other interested parties are in a panel to discuss it on the call. I wasn't at OARC, and therefore I missed the pre-meeting. And to be honest with you, I don't know enough about Deleg currently to offer an opinion. But I think that's why maybe I need the call to have an intro and a panel discussion. I think would be really, really useful. I don't think you're going to do that in an hour, though. I think you're going to need an hour and a half, 2 hours to do it.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Well, look, what I'll do, there'll be the BOF session in the next ITF meeting. So I think it'd be worth doing it after then, because that might change the direction of travel of the project anyway.
Yeah.
It'd be a bit pointless trying to squeeze something in before then and find it's not relevant within a week or so. So let me see if there's at least a willingness in principle from, as I say, I think the two Pauls plus Jeff would be an interesting start. I take your point though, having someone like sort of Dave Lawrence just set the scene, perhaps do a shortened version of his presentation, just so everyone has got some context prior to a discussion, and then obviously, as we always do, open out to bring other people in to just give lots of different perspectives.
I could also imagine a thesis or a research paper being developed on that, because it may involve so many different things we are not even having under the radar. I mean, in the big scale, let's say, internet operations, it may have very different effects there, which we don't know for just by looking at a draft what it might do locally or with a small scale. But for big scale stuff or root name servers or things like that, you never know what it has.
Yes. Well, in fact, one of the things I forgot to mention earlier, but was certainly apparent from the discussion on the Wednesday. It didn't come up in the presentation on the Thursday. Was no one's quite clear at this stage why the authoritative servers should implement DELEG, other than because they want them to, because it's necessary. But in terms of what benefit those server operators would gain, that has yet to be determined. And a few people made comments from various other initiatives. They've fallen at that hurdle where you can't persuade the authorities to deploy. Therefore, the whole project stops at that point. And as I say, the benefits to them at the moment are remarkably unclear. So that definitely needs to be developed anyway. But nevertheless, let's see. As I say, I'll ask both pools if they're up in principle for do something, and then we'll probably have a bit of a challenge getting a date that works. But if you don't ask, we won't know.
Will
So
become interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What I would say, Andrew, in response to that very briefly, is that having been in the shoes of being a large authoritative DNS operator in a previous role, that they don't necessarily need to see advantages, but they certainly need to see no disadvantages.
Yes.
So if there's any risk associated with supporting something new, then large TLD operators are usually averse to that, unless they can see something advantageous to offset that risk at least.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think the people who've been involved so far haven't really had that perspective, Brett. So in terms of the understanding of the point of view of those operators, and need to pay attention to that at some point if it is actually to be a viable project. But since they're still trying to define what DELEG is, I guess they can be forgiven for not having a perfect answer to that just yet. But anyway, that's an excellent idea. Let's see if the two pools could be persuaded to be involved in that, and then we have the challenge with Jeff of finding a viable time of day that works for all parties. But that's always fun to do that. But see if he can be persuaded to interrupt his beauty sleep. Okay, that's a good idea. Anything else that anyone else wants to raise? Not seeing anything at the moment. Nope. In which case, I hope it was useful. Do look out for the recordings from OARC. There are definitely some really good sessions there, so definitely worth you all catching up on if you didn't join during the sessions themselves. And other than that, have a great week and look forward to seeing you next week in time for the demo of the DNS Research Federation software. So catch you all then. Thanks all.